what happens. As you know, Stephen Dykman, when he won the last tournament, says, I haven't played much Modern in a bit. I picked Rhinos. Good choice. And we're going to see here, Stephen Dykman versus Cam Koenig, I believe.
Well, if it's German, it would be Koenig.
I trust you. It makes sense to be German.
So yeah, we got Cam on the play. No, so it looks like we are changing his leaf now. Okay. Still figuring it out. Oh, okay, Cam on the play, as expected. No first turn play for the 4-color Rhino stack. And Steven trying to, I guess, get down Dragon Rage Channeler. As long as we get like creatures and pressure early on, you know, that's how we want to get to the finish line, right? Well, what are we trying to do here, or from the Izzet Murktide side? What are the best ways to stop the 4-color Rhino deck?
Yeah, so for Izzet Murktide, sort of any of your early creature plays are all really good here. DRC is kind of the worst, but still fine. Ragavan, one of your best, and Ledger Shredder, surprisingly good. If they're ever going to do their Cascade thing, that's going to automatically trigger 2 spells, and you very quickly actually outsize a Rhino, / can chump block a Rhino with your 3/5 Ledger Shredder. So we're going to see Dykman really want one of those cards early and sort of stop the pressure from the Rhinos deck.
Well, that's actually a really good point, right? Because the Izzet Murktide deck, as you mentioned, has several ways to make big creatures, and once you outsize the Rhinos, it's going to be a big problem. I see that Cam actually has, like, I guess, Fire Ice to tap down a blocker that can to get rid of it, but to a point, Izzet Murktide might just like assume the control role here, I guess. Is this like can you even like sit back and try to outgrow them? Or do you try to get them dead as quickly as possible because you think that the Rhino stack is gonna overwhelm you?
Yeah, so from Dykman's side, it's really going to depend on the type of draw, right? If we had a Ragavan here, we might try to overwhelm because we'd have the mana advantage from treasures and the early lack of interaction in the Rhinos deck. The 4-color one does have Leyline Binding, so Cam's going to have a little bit more than the average bear when it comes to interacting. But Dykman is probably going to want to interact, as we are going to see Fire Ice kill the Dragon Rage Channeler here. Dykman's job is going to probably try and stop the first Rhinos or two, establishing like a big Murktide or a Ledger Shredder, and then start turning the corner. Dykman also has some extra spice in his main deck when it comes to interaction. We have Force of Negation, a card we don't always see in these Murktide decks, which is going to allow Dykman to tap out, and normally players can't do that in this matchup after turn 3, for example.
Well, Force of Negation is going to be an interesting one. So it's the idea that we try to Violent Outburst on the opponent's end step, so we will be able to use our Force of Negation to defend our combo, I guess.
Yes, yeah, that is it. And also Dykman has Force of Negation as well. So both players are rocking a lot of forces right now. And so there's going to be a lot of difference here, because normally you might see, without Dykman having Force of Negation in his deck, it might be more scary to tap out here on turn 2 from Dykman's side, because, you know, your opponent's going to untap and cascade into Rhinos most likely. And, you know, Dykman knows this is coming when he sees this sort of mana base. But now he gets to develop these DRCs and not just be cold to the Rhinos, thanks to having Force of Negation in the deck. We don't know if it's in hand, though.
And it looks like Cam is just passing the turn. He's got a Violent Outburst in hand from what we see, but he's fetching on the main phase, right? So that tells us he might just go for, I don't know, there's a couple of other, like Ardent Plea, or what have you. This is basically doing the Force of Negation check at this point on Steven.
Yeah. Yeah, and also Cam probably isn't even, you know, Force Negation's like maybe a one of, and so with Steven, you know, might just catch Cam here. We'll have to see exactly how it plays out. But yeah, it does look like we're going to try and get some Rhinos going here. And, you know, if Dykman has the answer, he's in a very good spot. Oh, so it looks like we are untapping. Okay,
interesting. So we're just proactively fetching and then passing the turn. From Steven's side, I guess we really want to grow our Dragon Rage channelers. They could provide some serious clock in the air right now, to the point where we might even be able to outrace the Rhinos if they come down, like, not immediately, but even like a couple of turns later. But Steven doesn't really have a lot of spells right now to cast, as Modern not exactly known for playing a ton of cantrips, like I guess Considers around. Thought Scour would be a nice one, I guess. But other than that, clearly... Well, I was going to say clearly Steven has something to play on the first main phase, but yeah, we're tough decision on him, it looks like.
It's interesting. I wonder if Steven's maybe stuck on lands, and the problem is he has a feeling, you know, Cam has the Rhinos ready here. But like you mentioned, if he can turn these DRCs into 3/3s, we actually have a 2-turn clock. Cam's playing the 4-color Rhinos deck. We've fetch shocked a lot this game. We're already at 12. So if we can get these DRCs online this turn, it might be worth letting the Rhinos come down, because Cam might not be able to race us.
You know what we need in Magic? We need this universal term of when you're sitting on 2 lands and you want the 2 mana, but you also want your 3rd land drop and you have a cantrip in hand. And you don't know whether to cast a cantrip to maybe get that 3rd land, but if you don't, you're completely screwed. So yeah, as we expected, is this end of turn Violet Outburst, I would guess?
Yeah, this seems to be what's happening here. And it might be beginning of combat. Is it? Yeah, Steven didn't attack, so it's possible since Steven didn't attack, he doesn't have a counterspell either. Oh, so we are going to see actual counterspell get cast here. All right, and some surveillance going on.
Okay, but with Steven tapped out, this is basically guaranteed to resolve, right?
Yeah, this is probably going to happen unless, I mean, I don't think Cam has a ton of the negations in this deck. But we'll see here.
Yeah, we're gonna get rid of
something. Oh, it's a second counterspell. Okay, that makes sense as to why he was tanking on it. And yeah, Force of Negation. That's going to put those Rhinos into play.
Yeah, we're gonna have a couple of Rhinos. Steven, fortunately, not forced to attack. Well, I guess we wouldn't be able to block anyway. But yeah, we got the Rhinos. We don't have an attack from Steven's side. And then once the turn comes back to Cam, we crack in for 8, which is not going to get blocked, taking Steven down to 9 most likely. And then it's going to be like the big thing is, can Steven send those DRCs to the air and ideally, like, you know, have one additional kind of interactive spell, like whether it's, I don't know, what do we have here? I'm looking at the deck list. There's actually not that many ways. I guess Unholy Heat could technically get rid of one of the Rhinos, or making a big Murktide if you have that around. But Cam also still has a bunch of cards in hand, so I like Cam's position here quite a bit.
Yeah, Cam's in a good spot, and this is part of the struggle with this matchup that we've seen, you know, Rhinos do so well, is sometimes it's a little hard to get down your Rhinos against Murktide, but once it's down, you kind of have to have Murktide and a literature that's already big, War Unholy Heat, and Unholy Heat only answers half a Rhino. So it really puts them in a very awkward position once you can sort of do this. And this is why we see the deck play cards like main deck Mystical Dispute, main deck Force Negation. They're willing to make these things happen in order to get the Rhinos down.
Yeah, Steven's still struggling. Honestly, Steven hasn't really been able to do much this turn, even though with 2 Scries lined up, he would love to have a card like, let's say, Consider, or like at the very least, double Lightning Bolt. But as you mentioned, right, that's a bad trade. If you have to do something like that in the long run, it's not going to work out for you. But Steven must have some interesting cards, like not only Counterspells, because he's thinking about what to do. And this, what are you going to do here? Like Expressive Iteration, I guess? That would be something I wouldn't feel too happy about casting right now. But okay, we're going to bounce 1 Rhino and Scry for Survival for 2.
Yeah, we're
getting rid of a Lightning Bolt.
I mean, yeah, as I say, if you might get stuck with a Lightning Ball in hand, you're just going to have to block a Rhino and bolt it. You know, sometimes when life gives you limits, but it looks like Dykman is digging, trying to not to have to consign his fate to that. As another bolt, yeah, I saw Dykman danked on the bolt.
Yeah, but Dykman knows, right? Like we mentioned, unless you have a clock that you can ride to victory in the meantime, like you basically temper the opponent out, that's not a winning play. Like trading 2 for 1 all the time. And Leyline Biting, eating one of the DRCs. So now we're down to just a single Rhino. This is basically like in Kenya. We have like 1 single Rhino that can't procreate anymore. I'm so sad.
Wow, weirdly topical. I love it. I don't.
I actually lied. It's 2 female ones, but I mean, you get the idea.
You know what? It's that way. The thing about 2 female Rhinos, Julian, is it's a lot like 1 female Rhino.
Yeah, at some point it doesn't really matter, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and we're seeing, you know, this removal from Cam having the things like Leyline Binding coming in really clutch here, just not allowing Steven to sculpt his draw anymore. Don't give him the time, because even with the DRCs not attacking there, obviously the clock matters, but just sculpting and allowing Dykman to find things like his 1-up Brazen Borrower is how Cam could lose. And we're seeing Cam just be like, nah, let's just get rid of this. I'm going to hit you for 4 for sure. You're going to have to rely on your top decks. Spend your mana Expressive Iterating. You're not going to have a lot of it left.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty tough for Steven. I'm looking at the deck list right now. Murktide could get him out of here. That would be big enough. Of course, well, there's only a 1 Brazen Borrower that's already gone, and that also won't be able to block anyway. So there's really not much that we are really able to do, but Murktide would be a big thing. So we are casting something for 2. Now, this could be an Expressive Iteration, which might be able to find a land in a Murktide, I guess.
100%. Yeah, I think that's what it looks to be here, especially since Steven's not touching the graveyard. Although he has taken a look there. Maybe he has a Delve Murktide. I'll say this. I just took a look at Steven's creatures. I didn't take a great look before. Steven only on one Ledger Shredder this weekend. That's a huge part of this matchup, Julian. That is a card that, normally we would say Steven's going to try and mulligan for that or Ragavan in game 2 here, regardless of win or draws. We see Murktide get delved out, but he's only got one, although he does have 3 main deck Spell Pierce. Coming prepared for people trying to tap out for the One Ring and for these Cascade decks.
Yeah, and the Murktide comes down. It's going to be a 6/6. It's going to hold back the Rhino for a while. But as you mentioned, Cam has quite a bit of interaction, so we could see another, well, let's see, even just tapping it down, right, with a Fire Ice might almost get you there. That'll get Steven down to 1.
Yeah, I'm down to 1. Make sure other Fire Ice is good, turns off fetch lands, right? So if Cam has something like that, we might see it.
Interestingly, Steven is also not really able to attack here, right? Once the turn passes back to him, as it does right now. Okay, we're gonna pass. Okay, that's gonna be a consider at the end of turn. Wouldn't mind filling up my graveyard a little bit more for, future Murktides and stuff, because we still need something to attack. At the very least, I guess Steven could eventually get down the Ferry, the Brazen Borrower, and then keep your Murktide as a wall, but I'm still feeling uneasy when I'm up against these 4-color Rhinos decks, because most of the cards matter unless you draw into your literal Cascade spells, and even then, you can suspend them.
Yeah, 100%, and especially in this spot too, where things are, you're already on the back foot. Their draws get so much better. Like Dead Gone, just unsummoning the Murktide. It is a big part of, we joke about finding second Murktide, like it's Lord of the Rings, second breakfast or whatever, but like, that sort of thing does matter, as we are going to see Force of Negation get hard cast here.
Steven doesn't look too happy and probably just passes back the turn here.
Yeah, he's tanking. He has, I think, 2 cards in hand. It's possible he maybe has something like, I guess his Unholy Heat just wouldn't be online yet because we had to delve away some stuff.
Yeah. It's also awkward for him because if you draw something like Ragavan, it doesn't really matter too much as a jump blocker because of the trample on the Rhinos. That's super annoying.
It's true.
Oh, and we're getting in. Okay. I mean, technically, Steven is not dead, right? So now, Steven is kind of winning on board. We just need Cam to not have anything.
Yeah, I kind of like this from Dykman. He's like, listen, you're dead next turn. My hand isn't very good at stopping you. I'm not going to get better, right? If you draw Dead Gone, Leyline Binding, I'm going to lose anyways. I might as well do this and try and kill you. And if you don't have an answer for my Rhino or a Violent Outburst to grow your Rhino, I'm going to win this game. As we do see Violent Outburst, maybe Dykman has a Spell Pierce to counter, and Dykman loses. Yeah, I like that attack, though. If your hand's bad, you might as well just try and win, right, Julian?
Yeah, exactly, right? If that's the only way, you have to assume the opponent doesn't have the thing that kills you. And super cool, like Violent Outburst used for the actual effect of pumping your creatures to actually like push you across the finish line. Loving it.
The hidden mode, +1/+0, tournament level card.
Do you actually know what Ardent Plear does? Like, what if you had drawn that one?
It's exalted. It would have worked.
Yeah. Perfect. So, what do you see on Steven's side here? You already mentioned, right, in the main deck, we only got one single copy of Ledger Shredder. Is there anything in the sideboard other than, I guess, the extra copies of Ledger Shredder that you really like here in this matchup?
Yeah, so Ledger Shredder's great. Force of Negation is another card that once again we can tap out and develop. And then if they go for a main phase, Outburst, Police, Shardless Agent, any of those things, we'll have an answer for that when we're tapped out. Engineered Explosives is basically here for this matchup and the Indomitable Creativity deck. So we're going to want to bring those 3 in here as well, along with our Flusterstorm. That's a card that, basically is going to be really good at stopping the Cascade from happening. Kind of Spell Pierce number 4 in this scenario, but a little bit better. And that's going to be it. We might see the Blood Moon since it is the 4-color Rhinos deck. I know players have some dissenting opinions on that. But we're going to see how Steven wants to approach this, especially on the play. We might see the Blood Moons come in for this game and not for game number 3.
It's interesting. I see a lot of cards in there, as you mentioned, right? Especially the Engineered Explosives that could be really good in the matchup. At some point, you might run the risk of having too much stuff to bring in, but not enough cards to side out. Like, which cards are you looking here to maybe get rid of for the second game?
Lightning Bolt. Tournament All-Star, not in this matchup, unfortunately. So that's one that's pretty low on my list. And that's going to make room for your 3 of your Engineered Explosives and 1 of your Legislators right away. And I imagine we trim on some of the cantrips. Like Thought Scour is a good card to throw out a Murktide, and so maybe we want some on the play. but it's much harder to find our sideboard cards with Thought Scour, and this is why we saw players move away from it for a while. So I imagine Dykman might trim on those in order to make room for it. I know some players like living in Heats and Fold Number. I know some like trimming them against Rhinos. Really depends on kind of your interaction suite. So we might see some of that get trimmed as well.
When you mentioned trimming some of the cantrips, are you eventually also going to look at maybe trimming some of the Dragon Rage channelers?
Maybe. I think on the play, we probably want our Dragon Rage channelers. It really is sort of, there's a lot of dissenting opinions, and like the way you build your deck kind of matters a lot here. But I think, you know, I wouldn't want to cut all my DRCs because on the play, we really want to get down a 1-drop. And then ideally another one plus a little bit of interaction and sort of ride those to victory. On the draw, I can definitely see cutting more of them and having some Unholy Heats.
Always loving these sideboard strategies that, you know, distinguish between play and draw. I think that's really good. Like when you can do that, you can squeeze out that extra little bit of value. I love that. Should we go over and look at Cam's deck?
Yeah, let's take a look at Cam's deck. Cam's deck, luckily the sideboard for Rhinos, per usual, Julian, it's 4 ofs and maybe a 3 of. This time we do have 2 2-ofs, and I think those cards are going to be pretty nice here. Teferi Time Reveler, traditionally very good against these Murktide decks. A way to stop all that counter magic we just talked about from Dykman's deck. Also a great way to unsummon a big Murktide Regent or a big Ledger Shredder. And, you know, Cam's not sure about how many Ledger Shredders, you know, Steven's playing. A lot of people play 3 or 4 of that card. And obviously doing the 1-2 split this weekend. And then we have 3 Mystical Disputes. Those are going to be really good at fighting over the counter spells. And then I like Endurance in this matchup. I know some players are lower on Endurance. I think we did see Thought Scour in game 1, so that implies to me that maybe there's a little bit more leaning on the graveyard. We might see Cam want to fight with some Endurances. Players sort of dissent a little bit there in opinions. And, you know, this 4-color deck is a little bit different than the average build, so it might be that this one doesn't mind the Murktide hitting play as much due to Leyline Binding.
Oh, that's a good point. Otherwise, I see the point of Endurance. Like you might make yourself more of a mid-range deck, like even more than you kind of are. Like this is a weird mashup between a mid-range deck and a combo deck. And if you underestimate like any of the two sides of the deck, I guess that could be a problem. You already mentioned a couple of cards that we're gonna bring in, and I'm not sure what we even want to take out. Right? I know it's maybe wrong, but in my experience, when we have these like mid-range combo decks that just like try to bury you under like stuff that is relevant, I don't hate taking out Force of Negations. Is that crazy?
I don't think that's crazy, especially when we're on the draw. It might be a little bit harder to set up, you know, that turn 3 and kind of tax them. Because a lot of times what you'd like to do is you'd like to go Cascader into Cascader. That's sort of like, hey, you have to tax your mana a lot. So I could imagine those. Also, I think, you know, this build of the deck has 10 Cascaders, while normal Rhino decks have about 8. I could easily see us trimming on Ardent Pleas in the matchup and just taking a couple of those out, being like, hey, post-board, my opponent increases their answers to Rhinos, increases their answers with counter spells. I don't want to have cards that just only put Rhinos in. And like you said, go a little bit more mid-range. So I can imagine seeing, you know, 1 to 2 Ardent Plea getting cut from the deck, cut a couple Force Negations, and then we might see, you know, some players like to trim on things like either Fire Ice or Fury, those sort of cards we could see leaving the deck here.
Good point. So both players still shuffling up. Who do you think is going to be favored post-board?
Post-board, Dykman has a lot more cards that are higher impact, but I think Cam's deck is still like pretty fundamentally favored. I'm going to go with Cam just because the cards still line up better for Cam than they do for Dykman. And Dykman needs to have some of these sideboard cards while Cam doesn't. You know, Mystical Dispute, Teferi Time Reveler, really good cards. Cam would gladly draw those cards, or the Endurance if Cam goes with that. But Dykman kind of has to have one of those cards that we talked about being boarded in, or needs to have like Ragavan into Spell Pierce, into, you know what I mean, and just have a lot of it immediately. And that is kind of like, you know, a big ask to have. So I think there's more pressure on Dykman to have a strong hand, while, you know, Cam's hands get to just naturally be a little bit advantageous in the matchup.
Awesome. I'm actually wondering, what is the best Rhino creature token that we actually have available? Because I always see the ones that Cam just put into play in the last game, and I'm always wondering, right? It's like there are so many tournaments where you can like design your own basically invitational card. What is the one that we should have for Rhinos?
Oh, it's Steven Dykman, who has a Rhino token that
he does even. Oh yes. Yeah, you mentioned how you won with it. Oh.
Yes, I couldn't tell if you knew or not. I was like, this is the best setup for all time. If you win one of our trials, you get an Inkling custom token. We didn't mention that during the prizes. So Dykman, I don't know if we have it. Maybe we can pull up on stream real quick here. It's him, kind of like a Power Ranger type character on top of a mechanical Rhino. And so he actually is Rhino tokens. I'm not sure if we have them at this
it's
event
a
or we
pilot
have them at the next
token
one.
that can
It's
also
a
act as a
pilot.
Rhino.
Sorry, I'm sorry. It's a pilot that's on top of the Rhino. So because he won, I don't know if you know, he won both our tournaments that weekend, Julian, and he won it with Rakdos midrange with a bunch of vehicles. And so he's a pilot, not just a Rhino, but it looks like a Rhino. So
you're a Rhino pilot.
Yes. So
did you say pilot or pirate?
Pilot. Like you cruise.
Like a pilot. Okay, I know some pirate.
Yeah.
I was like, a Rhino pirate. Okay.
Yeah, Steven's just a big One Piece fan. Oh, there it is on screen.
There it is
at the top of the screen. Nice. Yeah. If I can't do that one, I think that I would probably get like a cool Spider-Man collectible card. Like they used to have those for the Marvel comics in the late 80s, early 90s.
Ooh, okay.
And I would love like a Rhino like that. That would be kind of my go-to, if not for the Dykman token.
Wasn't one of the Turtles villains actually a Rhino, like Bebop and Rocksteady? I always confuse those two. I'm pretty sure one of them was like a Rhino.
Yeah, I think one of them is a Rhino. Yeah. Or
he might still be a Rhino.
If not.
that would be my choice. Like I would get like a custom one.
I like that. That's dope.
Okay, I guess Steven is keeping. Looks pretty confident. Cam still in the tank.
It looks like we have a Shardless Agent and not many lands.
Yeah, not a good start. Like sometimes on the draw, like if you have it sitting on a great hand and has like 2 lands and you want a third land, then you got 3 draws to find one. And maybe I guess a redraw with like Fire Eyes and stuff. But if it's just 1 land, you probably have to send it back.
Yeah, I think so. Especially in like this matchup too. Like your main game plan is so good, and Dykman is one of our best players and a well-known player in Magic as well. So if you know this sort of thing, Dykman's not going to keep a loose one, but sometimes you can just like 3 lands, 2 Cascaders, and you draw a third one off the top. You're just going to overpower a lot of really good keeps. So it's much better to try and have your deck function on 5 cards than to keep like a bad 6-card hand.
You know what I'm wondering? How often does the favorite play of players from like 20 years ago still happen, where you Fire Ice your opponent's land on turn 2, just for the tempo?
In this deck, a lot actually. This matchup too, Julian, where you'll Fire Ice to tap down Counterspell and then untap play your Rhinos.
That's so sweet.
Yeah,
loving it. That's basically the mana shard that the people used to play back then.
Yes, the mana shard. I love it.
Okay, Cam going down. He's selecting a lot of cards to put aside. I hope those are the ones he's going to keep, unless otherwise the mulligan would be pretty deep.
It's interesting too, because I agree. It's either a super mulligan that we missed. Oh, it is. Oh, I guess we missed Cam. Might have quickly mulligan while we were still doing sideboarding. Okay, so Cam looks to be on a mold of 4.
That's rough. At least, we drew a land from the top. Okay.
Had it, I believe is the term.
You see Cascaders in his hands. I'm pretty sure there's a Violent Outburst All-Star from the first game, and Steven's just developing with a turn 1. Is it going to be DRC again? Is it going to be Ragavan?
Yeah, if you're a Dykman fan, you hope it's Ragavan. If you're a Cam fan, you hope it's Thought Scour.
Thought Scour would be. Oh. I want a creature. I really desperately want a creature.
Yeah. Dykman didn't play anything on 1, so it makes me think, if I'm Cam, okay, Dykman didn't keep a hand that had Ragavan. If the Legislator doesn't come down here, I know it's tons of counter spells and EEs, and it looks like there is a threat. So yeah, the Legislator for Cam. This is an important thing too, Julian. We don't talk about this enough in Magic, where everything we do and don't do really informs our opponent on what's going on in the game, right? So Steven not playing a 1-drop really, if you're thinking about it for Cam's side, it's like, okay, there's got to be counter spells, a Ledger Shredder, or an engineered explosive if he's willing to keep that hand. I know my opponent is strong. As we are going to see, like you mentioned, upkeep ice.
Ooh, everybody above 50 years is like super happy right now.
Yeah, if you own a house right now, you're probably popping off for a couple
of awesome. Yeah, this also keeps Steven to the second turn again, right? We are basically going to see a repetition of whatever he could do with 2 mana. Like he might very well just go, land pass. Because previously, as you mentioned, like Cam wasn't threatening a Rhinos yet, but now that Cam is about to untap into a potential third land, especially if like Steven has a counterspell, you don't really need to take a risk if you're this far ahead. If your opponent just took like 3 mulligans, and the only way you would guess that you can lose is if your opponent overwhelms you early on, like the tempo versus card advantage game, you might just sit here and not cast another creature and pass the turn. And I think that's what's happening.
Yeah, 100%. You're so far ahead. Your opponent's on a mold of 4. You don't need to take risks. You're looking good,
Yeah. And we know Cam has the Violent Outburst in hand, so he might just go for that at the end of turn, hoping for Steven, to tap out for something. Maybe Steven gets a little bit greedy. But even then, as you mentioned, if we can get the Letter Shredder big enough, we might even be able to outgrow the Rhinos, and that's why something needs to be answered, which is a lot easier when you start out with 7 as opposed to 4 cards.
Yep. If we're going to see a main phase consider, Steven main phasing here, maybe looking for a land or something, definitely has Counterspell in hand. It's going to be interesting to see, will Dykman take a risk here and sort of try to develop and get this Letter Shredder bigger if it means lowering the Counterspell shields? As he has a Thinker card on top. It looks like Unholy Heat going to the bin.
Yeah, we just want to grow our Letter Shredder here as well. I guess it's not out of Fury range yet. But Cam already pretty much demonstrated that it doesn't probably have Fury. Actually, can't really say.
Yeah, it's one of those things where Cam might be a little hesitant to do it early. If we're going to see Mishra's Bauble, that's the perfect follow-up for your Connive there, leaving up the Counterspell mana. Also, I love how nonchalant Cam is. The player Cam, we get to kind of watch this thing. Cam's been looking around like, I don't have anything in my hand. Just tap. It's all good. Nothing to see over here. I'm looking for game 3. Just, kill me.
Yeah, like just get it over with. Let's go to the next game. Like, kill me with your flying. What is it even, like a bird wizard, I would guess?
I think it's a bird advisor.
A bird advisor?
Yeah, I think it's something weird like that.
You're correct. It's actually a bird advisor.
God, I know that, but I can't tell you my social security number to save my mother's life. Let's go. I'm cursed with knowledge.
So if you're cursed with knowledge, my favorite question, Veteran Explorer?
Yeah, I know Veteran Explorer.
Which creature type is it?
Ooh. I think it's
You're never going to, if you don't know, you will not know.
I'm going to guess Explorer, just because back then they did that sometimes.
No.
Oh, what is it?
Like as per Oracle, not what's printed on the card.
Oh, Oracle? Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Was it Explorer printed on the card? Was that right?
I don't even know. I don't think so.
Okay. Twitch chat, go find that for me. I can't look right now. I'm going to guess that it's like a druid or something weird, but only because I would have said human if you hadn't said something about it beforehand.
But it is human. Human is one of the creature types. Yeah.
Oh, it's a human something? Oh, no.
It's a human soldier scout.
Soldier scout. I love it.
Yeah, perfect.
Nice. Yeah, Twitch chat's playing along with Elf Druid.
Close enough, right? Somebody got soldier.
Yeah, see, unfortunately, now I know that, but when later on someone life's like, hey, how do you start a fire during the apocalypse? I'm like, soldier, elf, human scout. I exchanged that information.
But you're going to rebuild the entertainment industry, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, you know all about entertaining people. So, yeah, and Cam, not really interested in entertaining us. He's just sitting back. He's like, I just like my lands, pass the turn. Steven untapping on 4 lands, the 5th land coming down, and probably just going to get in there for 2 more damage.
Yeah, and from Dykman's perspective here, not really any reason to do anything. Has some counter spells up, is feeling good. And Cam really needs to set up Cascader into Cascader. Or, get Dykman to use the mana into Cascader. So Cam here just kind of patiently waiting. And this is what you need to do, like on a mold of 4. And just pretty typically in this matchup in general, is make sure that you're putting a lot of pressure on Dykman.
It's going to be end of turn. What are we doing?
Yeah. Using the gone mode.
Done it back to hand, sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that from Cam. It's a spot where, some players might be like, I need to keep this pressure going right now. Counterspell. Oh, it looks like it might have been in response to the attack.
Yeah.
Sorry, chat. Okay, so
I guess you're putting Steven in a position where he's got literally exactly 1 counterspell up, and I don't know if there's any proper way to protect yourself on your turn. Not really, right? At least nothing I can come up with.
One.
Yeah, that's a good one. So if you got that, I guess you can get Rhinos into play, but then you still have to eventually fight through the letter Shredder, which is probably going to outgrow them pretty quickly. But yeah, I mean, it's a game plan. You can't be too picky with your game plans if you're on a mulligan to 4 once again. And if this works and you see no other way to victory, you got to go for that.
True. Twitch chat loving Cam. They're spamming some ham.
Is it a thing? Like, I noticed it a couple of times already.
Yeah, I know that, ever since the Mythic Championships, as a community, we've started spamming emojis, and I love that. And this one's pretty good. I don't know what the Dykman's one is. I'm going to try to figure out the spam this, cheer on Dykman. I don't know what to do. I guess maybe Steven is the way to go about it. Spam this Steve from like Minecraft or whatever.
Oh my god. I guess that could work actually. There
it's
must be
kinda
one of
good.
them.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's gotta be.
Yes,
Dykman's good.
Dykman definitely chose a marketable, or at least marketable enough name to go there. What do people spam for you?
They just go boo, 4-color boo the whole time.
Oh, I can support that.
Yeah. I'm not actually sure. I had one and someone did cheer something. I can't remember what it was now. Maybe it might have been bark. Like someone just like spammed a tree as a Clark. I can't remember exactly. I like that one though. As we see a land get played off the Expressive Iteration, Dykman just holding up counter spells out the wazoo, not willing to take a risk.
Yeah, and I was almost gonna like mention that last turn. The more lands Steven gets into play, the more willing he's gonna be to start, chaining expressive iterations and completely run away with the game. So Cam really put in that awkward spot of knowing that the longer the game goes, the harder it's gonna be because Steven's gonna be able to like accumulate all that advantage while still maintaining control. But Cam also feeling that if we went for it right now, it's probably not gonna work. This is like literally one of the worst spots in Magic where you feel like I have to make a call and both of them are like decisions between like the 5 and the 10% play, and you feel like neither of them is good.
Yeah, it's really awkward. Also, if you're Cam, Steven just discarded Ledger Shredder to the Connive. That's the thing where you're kind of be like, oh, that can't be great. As we do see Endurance get flashed down here, it seems like Cam did decide to go with those, and they're going to pay off well here because it's something that doesn't lose to Engineered Explosives, which Dykman, would let one of those things resolve now and just pop the EE. Instead, we're going to have this pressure, and it might turn off things like Unholy Heat as Counterspell is going to get used.
Yeah, that sweet Ice Age Counterspell coming down, taking out the new card. And I mean, that's one way, I guess, for Cam to try and fight a little bit by trading your mid-range cards for the counterspells. But Steven, with more card advantage, yeah, as you mentioned, it's going to be rough, especially with the first Rhinos pretty much turned off with the EEs there. So, Mason, if you are constructing the perfect game plan for Cam, like how are the next couple of turns going to play out for you to still win the game?
Yeah, so I think last turn was the start of a good thing for Cam, where we got actual counterspell used. Now we kind of want to try and figure out some way to get some other thread to play. I think if we can fit Teferi Time Raveler in play, that's probably our best one. It can unsummon this Ledger Shredder and sort of make Dykman recommit and just buy more time. And I think we're just going to need to draw running Rhinos, but we can't run our Rhinos into the EE multiple of. So we need to play Rhino, attack, hope Dykman does it, pop it, and then do it again. Or, yeah, Murktide Regent was the other one I was going to say, as Cam plays this. And if this resolves, it's going to be really big. And Dykman in an awkward position because, he has the E to cover Rhinos. It looks like he's low on counter spells. And if this Murktide's bigger than his Shredder, we're going to have a very awkward game on our hands.
Yeah, Cam slowly crawling back into the game. That would be something, right? If you literally just sit there, do nothing for most of the game, then you're like, you know what? I got this big dragon. You got anything? No? Sweet. Let me take the win.
Yeah. I think this is like one of the spots where we're really seeing like why this matchup can be so hard, because Steven does have to, this whole game has had the card advantage, the mana advantage, right? Has seen more cards, had more selection, but has to leave up mana the entire game and is sort of playing like there's a Thalia emblem on him, right? And Cam's deck allows that to happen up until we get to this 6-7 mana point of the game. And that's a huge advantage and bought him a lot of time to get to this position, as Dykman does have Petty Theft from the Brazen Borrower.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah, that's really good. As we are going to see an Endurance in response. I really like this. Just make sure there's no other Murktides coming this turn.
I was going to say, yeah, why are we doing this? So you're saying like with the Petty Theft on the stack, we are this by preventing any way for Steven to fire up a second Murktide and out. Yeah, makes sense. Cool.
Yeah.
Or a first Murktide, I guess, on his side.
Yeah, my guess is Cam still has that Violent Outburst and wanted to hold up Outburst in case, Steven just passed. But now that he doesn't think that's going to happen and won't be a very strong play, he's trying to get the Endurance on the board, prevent Dykman from getting a bigger Murktide, and really sort of establish things here. As we are resolving the Connive, and we're going to discard a Scalding Tarn.
I mean, not going to lie, this actually kind of feels like a game. I mean, certainly more of a game than I expected when we had the Mulligan of 4 on Cam's side.
Yeah, if Cam can draw something like Teferi here or Fury, both of those cards are going to be really strong. These sort of real interactive cards, if we can use those to bridge and then start running Rhinos, and Dykman, eventually will hit more of these card selection cards and have to run through it, and has used, I would say, about half of their premium interaction so far. We have a couple Spell Pierces, we have a couple Flusterstorms, so we have so much mana that those might not be actually good enough against us in this game.
Okay, here comes Violent Outburst number 1. We're gonna try to get some of the Rhinos into play. At the very least, that's gonna eventually trade for the engineered explosives at some point, unless Steven actually manages to completely, overrun Cam. Cam is only down to 11 life, and that Letter Shredder is gonna grow here once again. I'm almost scared, for Cam to just straight up lose the race.
Yeah, and this is part of the problem too, right? Like, we put these Rhinos in play, we just pop the EE, we move on. We kind of have to do this though, because we need to get our Murktide back to being big. But like you mentioned, it sort of just grew the Letter Shredder. Now the race is getting worse, and that Brazen Borrower is coming down. We have 2 more turns after this before it's lethal.
Yeah, at this point, you probably need some removal from Cam's side, right? As you mentioned, like a Fury, but the Fury is not going to be enough even. So, and here comes the Dragon on Steven's side. This is going to be a really, really big Dragon, and Cam might just be straight out of this. Like, we might be headed for a third game here.
Yeah, I think there was a little bit of time where Cam, we were talking about there, could have drawn like Furies and running Rhinos and that sort of thing, got back in this game. Unfortunately, and we can hear at the convention center, players are gathering around the future match here. There's so much sound. It is exciting here, where the player now is just a little bit out of the range. So we're going to have to see what Cam can do. Cards like Leyline Binding is the only out, I think, to this Murktide besides the Fairy Time Reveler. And it looks like we have Dead Gone to buy a couple turns.
Yeah, Cam is trying to set up something here, tapping it down, drawing a card. I mean, I guess that's a band-aid. It's gonna maybe give you another turn if you have something. You're probably gonna, as you mentioned, the Leyline Bindings, but this is desperate. There's probably nothing here. And Steven looking pretty confident, turning it sideways. We got a dead gun, sending it back to hand, and the confidence of Cam being tapped out. Yeah, Mystical Dispute, and that's going to be a third game.
That's it. Yeah, and so we have game number 3 still coming for you here. We're going to come back to the booth here for a second while these players shuffle up for game number 3 here. And I want to quickly talk to you about the rest of the events coming to the NRG series for the rest of the year. That way you can play just like Dykman and Cam here if you want to get in the battle and maybe make it to our end of year $30,000 invitational. Let's pull up that first one, which I believe is in St. Louis. This is going to be our Lovers of Legacy here. We have a team showdown, Modern, Pioneer, Legacy, 10K showdown. You, 2 of your friends, head on out. So much fun, July 8th through the 9th. And then on Sunday, we have a Legacy Trial 5K. So if you love Legacy, we know it's sort of hard to find a lot of places to play Paper Legacy, unless you play the NRG series, Julian, where we have Legacy all the time, including tomorrow. So if you're a big Legacy fan, make sure to click follow on Twitch right now. That way you don't miss any Legacy tomorrow. But we have more events coming if you're not a huge Legacy fan. Like in Detroit, the following month, August 12th through the 13th, we have a Modern 10K showdown and then a Pioneer 5K trial. That's going to be very exciting and a lot of really cool things going on there with our players getting in the midst of things there. And then there's more going on for the rest of this year. Not done yet. We still have a couple events left. In October of Indianapolis, we have a 10K Pioneer showdown and then another team trial. So you and 2 of your friends can go out there and play Modern, Pioneer, Legacy once again on Sunday in Indianapolis, October 14th through the 15th. It's super exciting, Julian. Players have so much fun down here, and you have your chance to punch your ticket to our championship at the end of the year and win that big chunk of change, along with free entry to all our events for the next year if you do win.
Listen, you mentioned punching your ticket. Big suggestion from my side. From everything we've heard, these events sell out pretty quickly, right? We already are over capped for the Modern tournament that we're playing today with like 300 players. We were just told by production earlier that it looks very likely that the Legacy tournament tomorrow is going to sell out as well. So if you plan to go on going to these events, especially if you want to go to team events, like you don't want to be in a position where you make up, like you set up all your plans and then it turns out, oh my God, it's too popular. So buy your tickets now, get in there as soon as you can.
Yep, that way you don't miss anything as our players are shoveling up. And Julian, we kind of saw in that last game, you mentioned to me, like, who I think is favorite post-board here. And, Steven won that game, but Cam was on a mole for, and it was a real game. We sort of, it shows how it's going on there. Where's your head at now? You've seen these game 1 and 2. You've seen a little bit of the back and forth. What do you think is going to happen in game number 3? Who's your vote for? Because I didn't
honestly,
get to ask you
Rhinos all the way. I'm so impressed by that deck. And every time I'm like on the verge of picking it up again when there's a Modern tournament around, I'm like, let's just do it. Let's do it. Because in the past, I played Living End like 9 years ago, and Modern was like a lot of fun, and I still like it today. But it feels like, with the Rhinos deck, you have somewhat more play. I could be wrong. Maybe it plays different now. But I just feel so attracted to Rhinos, and I swear that's not only because of my affiliation with Kenya.
Yeah, it's not just the Rhino facts. Which
Yeah,
maybe we have some more
like
Rhino
if we had dragons in Kenya, maybe I would think differently, but they haven't been discovered yet.
Yeah, and I think the players are finishing mulling up down here for when I come to the area, as it does look like Cam's doing the last couple of shuffle as Dykman has looked to have kept here going on. Yeah. Do you need more Rhino? What's a fun Rhino fact? Do you have any of those?
They kill a lot of people. No, that's
wow, that's so much fun, Julian. I love your.
The thing is, like, people think like, oh, lions are the most dangerous one. No, it's like hippos, buffaloes, and rhinos. But rhinos are rarely encountered. Like, if you want to see a rhino, it's actually going to be super hard.
Yeah, I was gonna say I knew hippos were dangerous. We need more hippos in Magic. For a while, it was rhinos, and we have like the tokens from Amonkhet, but that's like it. You know, there's not enough hippo love.
I can sign that. What's actually the biggest, like, chat, help us out. What's the biggest hippo in Magic that's like not a changeling? I want to know. I want to know some hippo facts.
I think it might be Karuga the Macro Sage. It's a 5/4 companion.
Ooh, yeah. I know that one.
Yeah. I got my serialized Karuga the other day. I'm very excited. I'm excited to game.
Looks like Cam is on a mulligan here to 6, just sending back 1 card, while Steven is keeping 7. Yep. Steven, is it going to be the turn 1 play? Yeah, it looks like. Is it going to be Wild Dragon Wedge Channel once again, as Cam just shuffles at the gets the land at the end step, I would guess.
Yeah, and it looks like, this is part of the thing with this deck. You saw Cam look up, be like, okay, what's the right triumph to get here? Make sure I don't mess my mana up. When you're playing 4 colors, it's a lot harder than, when you're playing the Teemo Rhinos deck, which we've seen a lot of, it's just like, yeah, I go grab my Catcher Triumph, I untap, I fetch for the shock I needed, my mana's perfect. You got to think a little bit more with this deck.
So if you're Cam and you're sitting on Fire Ice here, would you be interested in Fire Icing the DRC? It doesn't really feel exactly great, honestly.
It doesn't feel great, but you do sort of want to just buy time. Like, right, we talked about before, Steven really wants to play a Delver Fish kind of game and just have a threat and protect it. So if you can kill this threat now, it won't allow Dykman to sort of smooth his draw and find everything, and it'd be a pretty reasonable thing to cash in. I'd much rather kill, like a Ragavan or something, but just getting this dead and untapping with an empty board is pretty tempting. We might also see an end of turn ice if that is in hand. Just try and, make sure Counterspell isn't there. But we do know about Spell Pierce, Flusterstorm. These sort of cards can still be problems. So it isn't as good as it is in game 1.
Yeah, so from everything I've seen about the matchup here, I would think there's almost like no scenario where Steven taps out on turn 2 after playing a creature on the first turn, right? Unless you literally got dead nothing.
Yeah.
And just want to add more creatures to the board.
Yeah, if Dykman was like maybe on a mulligan and had like a Ledger Shredder heavy hand, he would just slam the Ledger Shredder and be like, if you're going to go for it, I might as well get my Connive off and look for EE. But yeah, we're going to see him sort of hold up here, which is why, the Fire Ice was a little tempting to me. Just relieve the pressure on yourself. Even just, this little 1 goes a long way, in getting the match to go the distances. Cam?
Shaking his head, right? As he drew the card.
Yeah. Normally, I'm going to let you know a little insider trade secret here, chat. Not a good sign. Your opponent shakes their head. They're normally not happy. As that, no land.
Oh, no third lands.
Yeah. I got another insider trade secret for you. A lot of cards that cost 3 or more in Cam's hand. So,
this is why you're commentating here?
yeah, this is actually how I got in with Norm.
Oh, okay.
If they miss the land with Rhinos, what does it mean? And I was like, got a lot of spells. And Norm's like, get in there.
Steven's just chilling, getting in for 1 damage, keeping up probably the counter magic that he's assembled in his hand. And Cam, like, it's pretty easy for Cam at this point, right? I guess that's an easy game is not always a good game for you, because you either draw a land or you pass the turn. I guess you could try to dig with a Fire Ice if you draw it, and that's about it. What do we see in Cam's hand here? We see a Mystical Dispute. We see Violent Outburst. I think I saw Murktide. You see a Fury. So we already got the entire hand almost pieced together.
Yeah, it's either either Tough Fairy or Fury. I can't tell which I know is a weird thing to mix up on, but that's where I'm at.
yeah, actually. And Steven's like, okay, how do I like capitalize on this without like opening myself up to potential damage that Cam could do if he ever draws the 3rd land? And it looks like we're just going to play a land, get in for 1 more damage. And I mean, it adds up over time, especially if Cam eventually will have to like maybe go for fetch land into shock land. That's another 3 damage.
Cam drew Dead Gone, so that's a way to, make Dykman maybe have to protect this DRC and use his mana. I'm curious to see if, Cam is going to have to force Dykman to use the mana on his turn. We're just going to use it now, and so he doesn't have to move to discard. Both are pretty reasonable. We have a Murktide in hand as we discard the Dead Gone.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
So what would be the reasoning behind discarding it here?
I'm trying to figure that out myself a little bit. Maybe there's some other interaction spell that Cam's going to hold. It might also be setting up for Murktide and wanted to, I guess, hold up Mystical Dispute. Dykman's going to Spell Pierce. Real show of strength here, as we do see Roger Suleiman walking past Dykman in the background. A real show of strength. This, if you're doing this as Dykman, you probably have, some other permission spell lined up, and you're just trying to get this DRC going so that you can have a much better clock. If we can make this Delirious this turn, which we do with either, Artifact, Creature, any of those things will just make us Delirious. It looks like we're putting EE in the bin.
Yeah, that works as well, right? Yeah, Artifact.
Yeah, and you see Dykman there a little hesitant because that is one of his most powerful sideboard cards. But now the Dragon Rage Channeler is a 3/3, and that is going to be putting some real pressure on Cam.
Yeah, that's going to be a 5-turn clock. And now we basically resolve the Expressive Iteration. We already are happy with what we put in the graveyard, and now we get to basically pick 2 cards on top of that. I love that.
Yeah. And it looks like we're going to be putting Bauble from
That's
Bauble
a
into
perfect
Exile.
one.
Yeah.
If you just put something like 7 cards into our graveyard this turn, it feels like.
Yeah, I think we did a lot. And at the start of this turn, we just had a Polluted Delta, right? And now we're putting Flusterstorm in the graveyard, which is, if you're Cam and Dykman's this far ahead and is still putting Flusterstorm in the graveyard with Delirium going, something's up. As we do see Leyline Binding come down here. And, this might be great here from Cam because Steven has done a lot to protect this DRC. He might be in a position where, and that's a Wooded Foothills on top for Cam. So we're going to have the stuff going.
Steven's certainly not happy to see that one. He's going to lose his attacker. He's probably still sitting on something like 5 or 6 cards. Like, he literally hit every single land drop. So I would guess he's sitting on like 5 or 6 cards in hand. So that's still no good news for Cam, but this is literally the best card he could have drawn, land. And maybe, this is time to just like start jamming again.
Yeah.
It's rough. Like, your opponent just put 2 cards that you really care about into their graveyard, as you mentioned, in Engineering Explosives and Flusterstorm. So you feel like, oh my god, I have to like battle up that hill.
Yeah, I wonder if you're a Cam fan, if like maybe the Cam's best route to victory here is something like playing a Murktide or something that can dodge something like Spell Pierce, right? Because Dykman tapped out, right? I don't know if he had the land or not. It's hard to know for sure. But he was willing to go down to 1 mana. It's possible something like Spell Pierce, so the Murktide hand might be a good card to counter that. And
I was wondering, you mentioned Murktide. I was wondering whether this could be something like, a bunch of like endurances coming down to put some kind of clock into play.
Yeah.
But I would guess Cam would have played that on the main phase, so Steven couldn't go for a Murktide, so we can kind of rule that out.
Either main phase or upkeep the endurance. You can upkeep if you want to just tap Dykman's mana, But yeah, this looks like Murktide's coming down here. We're losing Delirium. I think it's probably a 7/7 Murktide, just looking at the spells that got exiled, but maybe an 8/8. As we're going to see Subtlety pitching Ardent Plea.
Yeah, I guess that works. Steven not too happy. Like, Steven makes the kind of face of somebody who's got into action to fight over it, but doesn't really feel like he must.
Yeah, he's like, I suppose to even fight over this? It's just a turn, Yeah,
well, what's the time walk? I don't care.
Yeah. And it does look like Dykman's going to fight back with a counterspell.
Okay. We really want that dragon. Sure, you got it, Kamsas. As he untaps into Violent Outburst on the main phase. It's going to give us the Rhinos. Is it the end of turn? Did he have... Oh, yeah, Subtlety is no mana, of course. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, you thought spells cost mana in the year 2023? Oh, my goodness. Awkward. Cam normally gets the Rhinos much quicker. There we go. All right. As we are going to see Spell Pierce. And yeah, we kind of knew that was in the hand from Dykman, but also Cam sort of forced play, right? We have a bunch of Cascaders. What are we going to do? Not cast into Spell Pierce when we have 3 lands?
I mean, this is the talk. We know about a Murktide in his head. At least I'm pretty sure I saw one, so he could certainly get one down here. But instead, we just go for it again. More Rhinos for the Rhino King.
Yeah, and just get that going here. I think this is also a pretty good sign that Cam, I was wrong by having Teferi Time Raveler. If Teferi Time Raveler was in hand, this would have been the perfect turn to play it, unsummon the Murktide. Now the counterspells are turned off for the rest of the game, and you're in a great position.
Here we go. 10 power into play. And that's... Well, it's not exactly enough to raise the Murktide, because that's going to be a 2-turn clock. But we're close.
Yeah. as we're going to see an attack here. And it is about 2 to 3 minutes left in our feature match area for these players. The end of round 1 just happened. Feature match players do get a little bit of extra time, quote unquote, because we take time from the clock to set them up and make everything ready for us. So these players probably have, 3 to 4 minutes before we hit turns here, but we are getting dangerously close to turns.
Yeah. Cam just stretching,
Yeah.
Just being like, okay, let's see. I did my best. Let's see if it's gonna be good enough. I got some more like gas in the tank here with like I think 2 or 3 cards in hand. Right now, Steven is like both players can probably feel awkwardly fine as long as they have some kind of interaction. And obviously, like Steven's gonna be favored because he's winning on board right now.
Yeah. Yeah, Steven also has the life advantage too. So I will say, Cam down to 6 means Cam's dead on the next turn. If Cam can unsummon this Murktide or, binding it or put a blocker in the way, his clock will catch up very quickly. 10 power, believe it or not, is a big number, and it will catch up very quickly. But we do need to have something, and we need Dykman to have nothing, right? Yeah. We have seen Dykman sort of just be very aggressively getting rid of our permission spell, so it's possible Dykman's run out of gas, but I'm not betting on it. As we do see
Cam most likely needs the 2 spell here, right? You need if you only got 1 piece of interaction, you're not gonna make it.
Interesting.
And we just let this resolve, which is gonna be able to come down the end of turn even. Oh, this is rough.
Yeah, that is actually pretty huge there. It looks like Cam has a Crashing Footfalls in hand. And yeah, we do have the Murktide coming down. I think it's bigger than Dykman's, which is big in these sort of matchups.
That's going to be essential. That's going to be absolutely essential because that's actually going to put him in the driver's seat. But Steven serving the battlefield, I think Steven has a Force of Negation from what I just saw, which of course doesn't do anything here. Well, this could actually be really good for Cam. It's like if Steven is sitting on a couple more like something like Spell Pierce, Force of Negation, something like that, none of those cards are going to do something yet.
Yeah. And, it's really awkward. Dykman decided to fight over the Rhinos on board, right? That way he wouldn't lose to, any sort of like weird situations going on that way, like a race. But now the end of that Brazen Borrower would have been really good here for this Murktide. So Dykman needs to find either another attacker or some way to grow his Murktide. Like second Murktide's a great way to, sort of outgrow this here. But he does need to find it quickly.
Yeah, chat is mentioning Lightning Bolt. I think we haven't really seen Lightning Bolts in game 2 or 3 yet. You mentioned early on that Steven probably took them out, but a Lightning Bolt could be an out with the Brazen Borrower getting in there right now on an Alpha Strike.
100%, yeah. And Bolt is such a strong card that, it is going here. And it looks like time has just been called for our players in our feature match area. So this is turn 0. So Dykman here, we might see the pace of play slow down a little bit. We saw the players kind of moving a little quickly there. They wanted to make sure to get as many turns as they can.
You know how judges hate that? Whenever like a match arrives in turns and one of the players is like, okay, we can slow down now. Like you literally every judge at the table is giving them the eye then.
Yeah, they're like, could you slow down? Is this why we're here? What's going on? As it seems like Dykman has a plan because this attack screams confidence. As we do see
this attack is basically saying Lightning Bolt, right?
Yeah, I mean it's saying Lightning Bolt, or I have
a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, I'm not even sure. Lightning Bolt, you could EE, because you could EE to kill the Rhino. Oh, interesting. So DRC is a second lethal attacker. So next turn we have 2 3-power creatures. And there's an Unholy Heating down the Murktide. All right. So Dykman cleared the air out now and has 2 lethal attackers for Cam, and Cam only has 6 power in play. As a missile dispute was the draw for the turn.
Yeah, once again, Cam needs to cast 2 spells here. One spell is probably not going to do it from everything we see. There's no single spell that really gives him the win here. Oh, that's rough. You need to double spell here.
Yeah, this is one of those very awkward positions, as we do see Violent Outburst in hand. Yeah, and that's it. Cam is going to get defeated by Steven Dykman here, taking it 2-1 in round number 1. Congratulations to Dykman. I'm sure we're going to see more of him this weekend. And we're going to take a quick break, Julian, because that was the end of the round, which means the next round's about to start. So we're going to take 1 second, get our feature match players in the area. But if you're watching, go grab some water. We'll be back in just 2 to 3 minutes.